Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. You know, Neely Fuller said it best. White supremacy believes in taking both sides of the conversation. And we're seeing this principle on grand display as it relates to Ukraine. The same Biden administration who sent white men on horseback with whips to beat the Haitians, well, they're now throwing their arms open for the Ukrainians, sight unseen. And for the half-wits and nitwits out there who are desperately trying to find some sort of talking point they can use and say, well, Professor Truth, you saying that immigration helps us now, right? No, I haven't said anything like that. My position hasn't changed. The position of the black media hasn't changed at all. We told the Haitians, y'all got to hold your own, and we're telling the Ukrainians they got to hold their own too, and saying the government shouldn't be doing this. What this morning's briefing is about is how these white supremacists, who for decades have been saying that they're all against immigration at all, forget about illegal immigration, we're against immigration, period. Well, they were against it until now. See, the position of the black grassroots on immigration has been consistent across the board. That's because we speak the truth. Black media don't tell no lies. But that wrinkled-up racist in the White House, Jim Crow Joe Biden, he's announced that the U.S. is going to be accepting 100,000 Ukrainians fleeing the war over there. Because you see, there's nothing wrong with refugee caravans getting into the U.S. just so long as they're white caravans. That's what this is about. And a lot of those black immigrants who were caping for Joe Biden, who were trying to protect him and defend him, they were all in their feelings when the Border Patrol was whipping their in-laws. These are the same ones who now they're feeling extra sore about this. They're going, this is not right. Is this right? Is this right? And the white media has not been raising any sort of disparaging comments about them. They haven't been voicing any sort of concerns. No stories whatsoever about the criminal element in Ukrainian society who'll be coming in here. Nobody's saying, well, you know, there's a whole lot of men who are trying to come over here. Nobody's talking like that at all. Instead, they're throwing the doors open. And they're not asking any questions about these neo-Nazis, not asking any questions about the criminal syndicates, which Ukraine has no lack of. Wherever you can find white supremacist gangs, you also find white supremacist criminality. The two go hand in hand because they're the same thing. And this is what's coming to the United States. Forget about bring your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Now it's bring your neo-Nazis, your drug dealers, and gun runners yearning to wreak havoc. Now, for decades, these white supremacists, especially on the right, they have said that their objection to immigration of any sort, they try to hide behind the talking point, well, it's not just about illegal immigration, why we're opposed to immigration at all. People need to fix their problems. They said that it wasn't racial on their part. Why, you know, if these were a whole bunch of white people from Europe coming in, why, we would object to that too. Look at that caravan of like 5,000 or 7,000 Negroes from Haiti. That's just an invasion. Okay, what about 100,000 white people from Ukraine? Well, you know, they got a rough situation over there. That's what they were saying for the longest time. Why, if there was massive influxes of white people, they would be objecting to it. Well, here you got a massive influx of white people coming, and they ain't saying squat. A large number of commentators have been asking where these white nativists' red line is at. Is there a limit to their nativism? Well, looks like we found it. Their objections are literally skin deep. Oh, you see how quiet they're being about this now. Here's Joe Biden talking about a policy of bringing a bunch of undocumented aliens here, and you don't see the Republicans saying, well, we have to object simply because Joe Biden proposed it. Oh, they're not doing it on this one. Fox News isn't saying anything about stopping the Ukrainians. Nobody's holding up any signs or bumper stickers saying that America is full. No vacancies in the USA. Nah, they're not talking like that at all. Nothing about how all these white Eastern Europeans are going to be bringing their family members over too. Why, you're not just letting 100,000 in. Before it's all over, it'd be 500,000. No talk about how culturally these people are not in step with the United States. Why, this is a former Soviet bloc country. Nobody's talking about assimilation. How long is it going to take them to learn the English language? What kind of religious or cultural or social differences with the U.S. that they have that would make it where they simply wouldn't be compatible with U.S. Western democracy? None of that at all. None of the racial or ethnic code words being dropped because this is something they want. All the typical screaming and yelling and the usual screeching that they do, it's not happening this time. All of a sudden, the usual suspects online who shriek like a bunch of stuck pigs under a gate about anything regarding immigration, all of a sudden they're real quiet like church mice. They're not saying anything about this. No objections here. When it comes to immigration, their minds are suddenly open and their mouths are suddenly shut. Now, according to Reuters, the talking point that's being kicked about by the Biden administration is, we recognize that some number of Ukrainians who have fled may wish to come to the United States temporarily. This from a Biden administration official who spoke on condition of anonymity. Hell, it was probably Kamala Harris. Now, why would they be speaking on condition of anonymity? Isn't this supposed to be a mission of mercy? Isn't this something that they should be beating their chest about and yelling it from the rooftop, saying, look what we're doing for these Ukrainians? Instead, they don't want to attach their name to their advocacy of this. Oh, this is so great, so moral. This is just so compassionate and kind. Please don't tell anyone that I told you this, that I said anything about it. We don't want anyone to actually attach our names to it. Now, we also know that there's not going to be anything temporary about this at all. The Reuters piece says that over 350,000 Ukrainian immigrants already live in the United States now, and this since the 2014 uprising. All of those Ukrainians who came to the United States, they didn't decide that as soon as Vladimir Putin's puppet got overthrown 8 years ago, that they were suddenly going to decide to go back home. Heck no, they were like, it is good over here. Okay, it's not so cold as in Eastern Europe. They were just fine right here. Nothing temporary about it. The people who are coming in, they're going to also request that their family members be brought over as well, and the government's going to do it, and the Republicans won't complain about it at all. As the article says, for Ukrainians who have relatives in the United States, the administration will seek to speed up processing of family-based visas for permanent residency. So in one sentence, we have an unnamed Biden administration official who says that this is only going to be a temporary arrangement. And then in almost the very next sentence, it says that there's going to be visas for permanent residency. They can't even get their lies straight. The article goes on to say the Biden administration said in a statement it would use the full range of legal pathways to bring Ukrainians to the United States, including the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program, which provides a path to citizenship. Oh yeah, they're saying over and over again, there's going to be permanent residency visas. There's going to be a path to citizenship. Oh, but this is going to be temporary, though. We know that they may wish to come to the United States temporarily. That's why we're going to be giving them permanent residency visas and a path to citizenship. Because nothing says I'm not going to be in this country very long, quite like being sworn in as an American citizen. So that's what's going on here. They're going to be fast-tracking these guys. And in a number of big cities across the U.S., this is going to have immediate political consequences. Keep in mind, cities like New York and San Francisco already allow illegal aliens to vote in their local elections. So when all of these Ukrainians get here, they will be able to immediately begin voting and getting to work as a voting bloc meant to supplant or displace the threat of black political power. If there's anything the United States excels at, it is being able to take certain groups of immigrants and get them on the white supremacist code. Hell, they've been doing it for hundreds of years. All of those Irish immigrants who were trying to escape the Irish potato famine, who were talking about how they chafed and how they were oppressed under British rule. Well, they came over here to the United States, a country founded by a bunch of Anglo-Saxons. And instead of them deciding that they would make common cause with black people against Anglo-Saxon oppression, they immediately began doing things like telling black dock workers, you can't work here because you're black. They made common cause with the Anglo-Saxons in the U.S. first chance they got. They began the draft riots where they were literally killing black people in the streets, and they have been racist towards black people ever since. And the same thing goes for the Italians and the Greeks and so on and so forth. The United States already has it down to a science getting these immigrants in here on the white supremacist code and letting them know that if you really want to prove that you want to be down with the dominant society, you make sure that you show us how much you hate black people. And it doesn't take long. The late Zbigniew Brzezinski was from Poland. And you see how racist his daughter Mika Brzezinski is. That stuff is taught in the home. So for all of you Biden butt kissers out there, especially the fools who were saying Biden knows he knows what the black vote expects from him. He knows what the consequences will be if he don't do right by us. Yeah, well, Biden's kicking black people in the teeth every chance he gets. Since apparently the Democrats have realized that they're not going to be able to cultivate all of those Biden Republicans anywhere near as quickly as they had hoped, now as far as they're concerned, well, hell, we already know how to use immigration as a means to get new groups of people into the country who we can turn against black people. The United States excels at that. That's the American way. Literally, the very foundation of the United States is based on anti-black racism. It's in the Constitution. That's part of the country's DNA. So hating black people, that is the way to prove that you're an American, and everybody knows it. Now, you're not going to be hearing this from your bootlick media. You ain't going to be hearing this from the joke reads, certainly not from the roly-poly Martins. They'll give a tisk-tisk. But what they're not going to be saying is that this is definitely not something that's going to be benefiting black people. They're not going to be telling you about, okay, here we go again, the same playbook that got ran 120 years ago with the massive influxes of Europeans. They're running it all over again. You think the same joke read who was saying that African students in Ukraine needed to stay put, while all those white Ukrainians were leaving and now coming to the United States. You think she's going to be sitting here saying, wait a minute here, it's one thing to be getting out of the country, it's another thing for you to be coming over here. No, of course not. This is exactly what the format's been from the very beginning. This is going to be understood by both the white political left and the white political right as a means of having a demographic and political counterlever against black political influence. That's what it's going to be seen as, and that's how it's going to be treated, and that's how it's going to be worked. So we have yet another example now of Democrats and Republicans proving that they can indeed agree on policies. Oh, all of a sudden they're going to be finding massive headway on immigration now. And the same way that Biden and his pals have proven over the last few weeks that they have absolutely no problem finding hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to give to Ukrainians on the other side of the world, they're also going to be mirroring that exact same policy here in the United States. All of a sudden, there's going to be no problem making sure that there's money for communities and all the rest of it for all of these Ukrainian immigrants. Meanwhile, they'll be telling black people, well, we just ain't got it. There's nothing we can do. See, when it comes to black people, Biden says, well, how about a day off for federal workers, Juneteenth? They give a gift to themselves. But when it comes to these other groups, it ain't nothing but tangibles. And this is the reason why we have to accept the fact that we don't have any political friends and stop talking that dumb stuff about how you're going to rehabilitate these doggone white supremacists on the left or the right. They cannot be rehabilitated. They can only have their power broken. Can you imagine how difficult it would be for, say, a President Trump to do a 180 on immigration? He ran on a ticket of, we need to stop immigration. It would be very difficult for him to bust a 180 and say, after some thought, I spoke to my wife, spoke to Melania, Melania, talked to her a lot, very, very nice person. And she has told me that some of her in-laws need to come over, about 100,000. I've had an epiphany on immigration. I'm cool with it for now. No, you would already have people who would be wrapping him up in knots. It would be something that politically would be very difficult for him to do because he handcuffed himself to being an anti-immigrant zealot. At the very least, it would not be something he would be able to do without being politically lambasted, especially when you consider how Trump treated the Ukrainian government when it came to military aid. And no, this is not some roundabout way of saying that Trump should be in there boosting Trump. I could give less than a rip about him any more than I could Biden. But the point that I do want to make, however, is policies are made based on what a politician thinks he can get away with. And this kind of maneuver would have been substantively more difficult for Trump to do. Not to say that he wouldn't have attempted it, but as sure as hell would have been a lot more difficult for him to do. Because the blatant hypocrisy would have been so glaring. Hell, you would have had people on his side. You would have had the Ann Coulters and others who would have been forced to say, well, pretend anyway, to pretend as if they're standing on Trump, we don't know about letting all these people in. But this is what's coming down the pike now. This is what's on its way. And let's be bluntly honest. Somebody might want to go back and find out of those 350,000 Ukrainian immigrants in the U.S., how many of them are eligible to vote? And of those who are eligible to vote, how many of them voted for Donald Trump? We already know exactly what forces are at work here. All of those racists and neo-Nazis are over there. More than a few of them are all going to be on their way here. And even if they're not, that's okay. Their family members and relatives and associates are going to be here, and a number of them will be showing up in short order thereafter. So I guess that's why both the Democrats and Republicans aren't expressing any misgivings about this move. It seems both parties have already decided that when it comes to supporting the racial status quo, these newcomers are going to fit right in. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Cloudwalker Z, Osiris Sprav, Tyquin Campbell, Kimmett, and Cynthia Nixon. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.